Hello lovelies, how are you all doing today? I do hope you're well. I am. Let's just dive straight in today. Some more books for you. Again, dipping back in time a little bit into the archives. And this is quite a mixed selection of books, but what I enjoyed particularly, as we'll find out in a moment, they sort of took me back to my book selling days, my joy of being a book dealer, but also my joy of being a book customer and the joy of the hunt. That slow hunt to find the perfect book, delay the gratification, have it winking at me on the shelf, and then finally dive in. So yeah, that's bearing that in mind, the joy of the slow hunt. Let's just dive into these books that I was talking about a couple of years ago. I have just read 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops. I'm one of them. So this is the 3rd book by Shaun Bythell. Scottish guy, has a bookshop in Wigtown up in Scotland, western Scotland. I think it's Glasgow would be the nearest main city, I think. Wigtown, it's kind of developed, it's called a book town, rather like Hay-on-Wye is in England, because so many bookshops are there, literary events, what have you. Anyway, he took over the bookshop that he now owns and runs in, I think, 2000. I think he must have worked there before. So, the books I've previously read of his, that I've mentioned before, this is the first one I read, The Diary of a Bookseller. And it's just that, it's his diary every day in the bookshop. It even includes how much money they made that day. This was a gift. Where's my gift tag gone? I used my gift tags as... it's dropped out. I'm really sorry. One of you gifted this to me. I'll tell you something else about these 3 so far. Then the next one is called Confessions of a Bookseller. This was also gifted to... this was gifted to me by Jan, a friend of mine who lives other side of the pond. Thank you, lovely. Raced through this one as well. And they are more novel length. They're sort of, your 300 and odd pages. So they're a couple of days of a read, a couple of nights. This one is a dinky little book. Now this one was sent to me by Shaun. Thank you, Shaun. And Jan sent me a copy. But so there's all 3 of them together. Hold on a sec. I've had 3 more copies of that and 2 more copies of that from various friends, like personal, real life friends. Because it's the perfect choice for me, of course it is. It's about bookshops and I love reading. So what's been wonderful, what I've loved is I've been able, because I've had so many duplicates, I've been gifting them to other friends and everyone's saying the same thing. Brilliant. They're an easy, quick read. But this one, and this has prompted the gobbling down, and what I'm going to talk in a second about the slow hunt. It's basically a bitch and a gossip about the kind of customers you get in bookshops, and they're categorised into, there's the expert, there's the family, there's the occultist, the loiterer, the bearded pensioner, and the not so silent traveller, and the family historian. Now all of those categories are further broken down, and it was hilarious because so it is a really short little dinky book. I read it in about an hour and 20 minutes. Every page I turned, I was squealing loud, going, oh my God, that's so true. That's so true. Oh, I know that customer. I know that customer. It was just brilliant. And I think even if you're not a bookshop owner or an antiquarian book dealer or book buyer, I think you would enjoy it anyway. But then what I enjoyed at the back was, there's also a little section on some types of staff. I don't think he got that quite spot on. I didn't think he got the second-hand bookshop, book trade staff quite right. But there is one category about, where is it? Right at the end. Yeah, here it is. The category is called the perfect customer. And this is where I fit in. I am the perfect book customer because, firstly, because my tastes are really wide-ranging. I will read pretty much anything, so long as it's well written. But also, I'm a reader, but I'm also a collector. So there's those two things going on. Not so much in the last few years since going without a wage, because the kind of things I collect can be expensive. But I am a collector. One of the things I collect is in, I'm looking at the clock, we might not even get around to it again. But the reason I'm the perfect customer is because, you know, like the expert customer, for example, is basically a show-off. Well, that's one of the categories. The person who comes into the shop and asks for something incredibly obscure, possibly technical, purposefully to try and show off that they know something that the bookshop owner doesn't know. And the chances of having that book are, you know, slim to none. I'm the opposite end of that spectrum. I may go in and say, do you have such and such a book or an author? I'm a bit broader. Or a category, like, do you have books on mountaineering, for example? And I might go and look at the mountaineering section and, you know, read it, there's nothing there for me. But I don't leave the shop, and this is why I'm the perfect customer, is because I will look at every single shelf in the shop and I will always find something that I'm engaged with, that I'm excited to read, that, you know, piques my interest. And it's rather like that, you know, it's the same in charity bookshops, isn't it? That it's not like going to a new bookshop where you say, have you got the latest book by, I don't know, think of a pulp writer, Dan Brown. Of course they'll have it in stock, because that's what they do. They sell all the latest books. Whereas going into a second-hand bookshop, have you got the latest from Dan Brown? Well, they probably haven't got the latest, unless they've got a reviewer who sells to them. But also it's probably not the thing they sell. But the thing with a lot of second-hand shops and charity shops is there's not really a lot of order in the shop. So it's not like you can go up to one specific shelf to look for a specific book. You kind of have to look through everything. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about the slow hunt. So when I go to bookshops, I always buy secondhand these days. I pretty much, yeah, I've almost always bought secondhand, apart from that wonderful trip I had to Waterstones with the gift voucher. I will go in with zero expectations. Always keep your expectations low, and then you'll be pleased. Like in life, like with men. Sorry guys, kidding. But so I go in, no expectations to find anything, no specifics. Just go and have a browse. But the thing is, I always have in the back of my mind a list of books I'm looking for. They may be specifics, a specific title or a specific author, anything by that author, but you know. For example, I'm looking again for, do you remember this is one of my next reads. This came from Lorraine. There's the card for the bookmark. It's Patrick Lee Farmer, who I talked about when he came into my bookshop and we fell in love. I've been kind of on the lookout for his books again because I think I'd like to reread them because they're so brilliant. But I'm not in a hurry. If they turn up, they turn up. I'm certainly not going to go on Amazon. And there's no joy in that, is there? There's no joy in thinking, I want some Patrick Lee Farmer. I know, I could go on my computer right now and I could order the lot of them. Where is the joy in that? There's just no, I won't have any human interaction doing it. I won't get to speak to other customers who are browsing in the shop. I almost always end up talking to another book browser. B, I won't get to talk to the bookshop owner. And if I don't talk to the bookshop owner, how can I get to know them? How can they get to know me? How can they get to know what I like if I don't have conversations with them? And if they don't see me every week and they start to develop a picture of the sort of things I like, So that one day, this happened recently actually, I was in one of my favourites, having a little browse, and the guy, he was pricing got a new box of books, second-hand, but new to the store, books he was pricing. And on my way in, I'd said hello, we had a quick chat about, I don't know what, doesn't matter. I'd gone and I was browsing the shelves, and then I suddenly heard, "Ooh, Vivi, you're going to like it." So I trotted back to the counter, and there were 2 books. They were perfect. They were so me, brilliant. That wouldn't happen if I just went on the computer. This is what I mean about mundane things becoming part of the joy. Yeah, so I wouldn't have conversations with customers. I wouldn't have a conversation with the shop owner, which helps them to get to know me, and then they start to set books aside for me to see when the next time I'm in, exactly as I did with my customers as I got to know them. I would see Simon, that's all I'll say. I would see Simon come in and I'd say, "Oh, I got hold of this a couple of days ago. Do you fancy it?" And he'd go, "Ooh, yes." But also, it's the random finds, the treasures that would be missed. So if I'd ordered all my Practically Firmer online, I wouldn't have seen, if I'd gone to the bookshop and not found the Practically Firmer, but in looking for it, found something else that I think, "Oh, I've never read that. I've heard folk talk about it. Yeah, I'll give it a go. It's only £2.50. I'll give it a go." Support your local bookshops, please. They really, really need it. So yes, this makes me the perfect customer. I'll buy anything. I don't always. There are occasions, shock horror, there are occasions when I come out of a bookshop empty-handed because just nothing's taken my fancy that day. But there are other days when I can come out of a bookshop with 10 books. And I do have that little mental list. Paul, a few months ago, was looking out for, I can't remember the name of the title. It had tomato in it. There were 2 books by the same chap. And I think one was like 10 tomatoes of the world, and the other was the most expensive tomato. So I didn't have this, I kind of had that-ish in my mind, but I knew if I saw tomato on the spine, the minute I looked at the cover, I would know if it was the one that Paul wanted. As it is, he was gifted those, but they're still on my mental list because I think they're something I would like to read, and certainly I would like to have in my shop. The joy then of finding something 2 or 3 years after the hunt began. Oh, so all of this joy even before the book has been read. Now back to that shop I was mentioning a second ago where he was pricing some books and said, "Oh, I think you might like this." What were his words? I think he said, "It's you all over." Looked, I thought, yeah, you've got me right. But this was the shop, I can't remember, I'm just going to have to look at the publication date of this book. Bear with me a sec, head down. Okay, 2018 in the UK. Probably came out the year before in the States. When this book came out, I thought, oh yeah, I'd like a read of that, please. So I immediately put it on my mental list, and blow me, I don't know, about a year after looking on an almost weekly basis, I wasn't seeing it anywhere. So in all my favourite little second-hand book places, I spoke to all the individual members of the different staff in the different shops to say, I'm on the lookout for it. If you get a copy in, would you mind holding it for me? Because some places don't like holding books for people, but I figured they would probably say yes to that just because they see me all the time. And then because I'd put it out to the universe, to them, to look out for me, of course I kept looking. But then there's one day I was on the other side of the street and one of the guys shouted across the street to me and he was waving because he'd got it. He was waving across. It's like jumping in the air with it. I was like, oh, thank you. So it's the Michelle Obama biography, Becoming. Now, that was about a year ago, maybe? Look, it's like I'm becoming. Michelle. I haven't read it yet. I think when I read it, I'll race through it. But the joy of this book has been around since 2018. So I've already had 4 years of pleasure from it. I think I've over-egged the point, haven't I? But yeah, so I've looked at the clock. I think we might have to... I'll rattle through it. I'll tell you what. Should we stay? Should we just stay and rattle through these because there's another pile to come? Yes, Michelle hasn't been read yet, but I think I'm looking at my stack by the bed. I think she's next. But anyway, yes, I highly recommend all of the bookseller ones. Even if you're not a bookseller, even if you never have been, the fact that you read books means you go into bookshops. I hope, yeah, have I overemphasised that as well? Please keep going to bookshops and not, interact with other human beings. It's part of the joy, isn't it? So, very quickly, because I've already mentioned this a couple of times, it's the Dick Prenke One Man's Wilderness 50th anniversary edition of a book that was essentially put together from his journals, full of gorgeous photos. Oh, it's achingly beautiful. Briefly, the story is he's in Alaska, he goes bush, builds a cabin, lives happily ever after, sort of. This book focuses on the first year he's out there. So the first half of the book, I think we start in about May, the first half of the book is very much about him building the cabin. Obviously, there's a race against time, he's got to get it built by the winter. And in a way, it's a book of two halves. I need to slow and calm down now. I got giddy talking about book hunting. Because as we go into winter, obviously the building stops, things slow down. And even as we go into break up in the spring, it's very much his observations of the wildlife, of the beauty of the landscape. It's a very quiet book. I'd started reading it when I was on my Odd Teapot trip with my sister. Hadn't finished it, didn't pick it up again. That was at the end of July, for goodness sakes. And in a way, it was the perfect book to take me into my time offline, my going into quiet time. I got to the end, and as I was reading the last, I didn't want it to end. I wanted him to keep telling me this story forever, because it's so beautiful. And in the last, as I was reading the last few sentences, I did this breath in, and just in time with the last few sentences, I did this huge sighing breathe out, and my eyes pricked. Yeah. It's hard to talk about the emotional impact of a book, isn't it? But there was something just so simple, so humble, so beautiful about him. And it was the perfect reminder of getting back on track to be the person I want to be the person that people like Dick inspire me to be the best version of myself, to be quiet and beautiful and appreciative and humble. So I absolutely highly recommend it. That I am pretty sure, when I'm thinking about it on the 31st of December, I think it's going to be my book of the year. Although I'm not going to talk about it yet. Oh, I was going to say there might be a joint winner. It might be a close runner-up. I might have to have 10 books of the year. But yeah, beautiful. It was a gift from Rob. Rob, continued thanks. This is going to go on my shelf and stay on my shelf for me to take on and off and dip into from time to time. These days, after I've read a book, I'm tending not to hang on to it. I'm either putting it into the shop or passing it on to a friend or giving it to one of the bookshops that I buy from so they can sell it again. Gradually shrinking things down, but I'm not getting rid of that. Then, oh my goodness, it was a bit of a jump. I will show you a picture and then you'll know why I bought this book so many years ago. It's called Two on a Trip by Lady Kitty Vincent. This is her. Written in 1930. I think it's out of print. It's probably out of print or print on demand. But it's a bit of a shock to the system. So it's based in Canada, I think in the northern parts of Ontario. So you can see it's a kind of a logical follow-on from reading Dick Prenke. And I quite often do that. I'll read 3 or 4 books in a row which have got a sort of a thread running through them. And then I'll take a couple of days break and start into something completely different. Quite often need a break just to get my head out of that particular space to open it up to go into another space. And I thought, yeah, it's been on my shelf for years. I bought it, I must have bought it in the late 90s, I think. So it's been on my shelf over 20 years. And this is one of those books that I've gone into a shop and it's like, oh, this is the collector in me. I collect books on cold places and wilderness. Oh my goodness, it was a bit of a jump. And I think one has to have a context, sort of remember the context before even jumping into a book. Written in 1930, so straight away we know the language is going to be different. The ideas and culture is going to be different. Also, Lady Kitty Vincent, well, that gives us an idea, doesn't it? This is someone who is, you know, well enough off to go travelling, to go on little jaunts. So it's an odd little book. The vast majority of it is not about her time in Canada in a cabin with her friend. She's gone on holiday. She's gone there for a holiday. She's been before to this part of Canada, loves it, loves the cold, loves the landscape, loves the wilderness. But it's not an easy read because culturally, oh, you know, we've come so far. We've still got a long way to go, but we've come so far from then. How she talks about the First Nations people. I mean, it's not nasty, but it's just in terms which, oh God, they're so grating now. But also, there were a couple of bits and I thought, oh no, that's a prejudice that's been handed down because you haven't actually spent time with those people. So I found that difficult. Otherwise, it's a bit of sort of frippery nonsense that a lady had the time to experience and then write about. Yeah, I'm not recommending it. I think as a curio, as part of a collection, great. I will sell it, but I won't sell it in my shop. I'll sell it as when I'm selling my proper kind of not proper, how to put it, my more niche collector's items. I think if you're a completist and you want a complete collection, you'd be interested. I think there is some value in now reading something that's nearly 100 years ago to be able to reflect on, you know, how far have attitudes changed? How far do attitudes need to change? I don't think we should shy away from uncomfortable truths from some time ago. Knowing that that's how people thought and felt can kind of indicate to us, you know, how we still need to check. You know, I think you get the gist of what I'm saying. So yeah, I'm not recommending it per se, but just relating what I thought. But I do, like I say, I do think there is value in reading older books from this perspective of thinking about how we as a society develop and change, how cultural differences are perceived and how we perceive them now. I think that's important. Okay, finally, Esther. Woo. Quickly, Vivi. So I've picked this up for the shop and then I thought it was sitting on the a shelf waiting for me to upload it into the shop, and then I thought, well, it'd be rude for me not to read it first. I mean, it was secondhand anyway, so it hasn't hurt me reading it. I read The Wild Silence by Raynor Winn. Many of you, I'm sure many of you have read this already. Some of you might not. It's taken me ages to find this. I've been looking for it ever since I read The Salt Path, which was her first book. If I show you there, you'll recognise, can my camera cope, recognise the cover? The Salt Path is, of course, her book about her and her husband Moth's walk on the southwest coast path, which took months. It came about as a result of them being made homeless. They lost their property in a bit of a legal issue. At the same time, Moth was diagnosed with, I can't remember what do they call it, CPD? I'm sorry if I've forgotten the name of. It's a degenerative neuro disease. So this is the follow-up, and the premise of this is, by the end of the Salt Path, I'm not giving too much away by saying they end up staying in Cornwall. They get the offer of some accommodation to rent, so they stay there. So this sort of picks up from there, and it tells, in a way, it's sort of a book of 3/3 really. And the middle third is all about how the Salt Path, the book, came into being, how she became a writer after that, you know, that time of walking the path. The last third is they decide to go on another walk because Moth is deteriorating again, and she feels that walking will help. And so they have it's about a week long, a long walk across Iceland. God, it made me feel cold reading it. And then the first third, in a way, is the first third I loved. The second third interested me. The last third, the walk across Iceland, I didn't really care for it particularly. I felt almost, in writing about it, I felt she was almost trying to recapture the glory of the writing of the Salt Path, and it just didn't have that quality, and it felt forced because of that. So yeah, I didn't care for it. I raced through that section. The first third and the second third, I actually read quite slowly for once for me. The first part of the book, I don't think I'm giving too much away with this either. Her mum becomes ill. So she's going backwards and forwards to visit her mum, and it triggers all sorts of memories from her youth, growing up on the farm and in the countryside, and it's really beautiful. There's a real rhythm and flow to that first third of the book as we dip in and out of her being with her mum, her memories of being in the countryside. She picks up a book while she's sitting. Her mum gets really very ill. She's reading a book at her mum's bedside, and that triggers more. So it's very much, in a way, it's very that first third is very much a book about rural life, natural history, the beauty of it, and I absolutely wallowed in it and loved it. And the whole theme of her being at the hospital with her mum and having to be grown up about it, and decisions, and it was incredibly moving. It was so, I'm going to get emotional now. It was so beautiful, and I did, as I'm doing now, get eyes that pricked and a throat that constricted, lump in throat, reading it. It was just exquisite, absolutely gorgeous. And then for me, it kind of goes off, and so the second third of the book, she starts to write about Moth's going to university, he's going to get a degree, and then she starts to write out the memory of the Salt Path, and it's all about how the second third of the book covers about 3 or 4 years. She writes the book, and then it's the story of how it ends up getting published, and then they get the offer of renting a farm that the owner wants it to be rewilded. That would have been so that's what I really, really wanted to read about, but it's it's very skimped over. And also the reason I think it goes off the boil, that first section, like I said, it has this beautiful natural quality to it. It just feels like those words are just coming out unedited, just flowing, and we're in that flow, we're lapping it up, it's beautiful. And then suddenly it feels very, there's an archness to it I didn't like. It sort of every other set, it feels like with each paragraph she's trying to give this great import to each paragraph, that this is really weighty and important, and it just it bogs it down. It's you know, she's in a horrible, and I don't mean this in an unsympathetic way, they are in a terrible situation. I don't know what their situation is anymore in terms of his health. I don't know if he's still alive even. But yes, that's a horrible, horrible thing that's weighing over them, this degenerative neuro disease he's got. It's horrible. But she refers to it, it's almost every paragraph. And it's like, we as the reader, we've understood that, we've got that, we're with you. I want to know, it's hard to put it. It's like, I want to know how you're feeling, but I don't need you to tell me that you're feeling that because of his thing. We know it's because of that. Let it just come out, let it flow. It felt like she was trying to write a great work, a great important work, rather than in that first section she'd just written it and it was natural and beautiful. So yeah, it's a mixed review, mixed bag from me. I do think it's well worth a read. Especially that first section I thought was utterly stunning. I would love, I don't know if she's written a third book, I'd be really interested to read that, because her style of writing in the first section of this book is gorgeous, lovely. The style changes and it like I said, it just became so arch. It was not for me at all. So it'll be interesting to see in a third book if she just lets it go again, just lets it flow out, instead of trying to be clever or, you know, weighty or any of that. It had the feeling, to sum it up, it had the feeling that this was the first book, you know, people were giving it a lot of weight, saying it was profound, and that's what it is. I think so many people in reviews and stuff had talked about the first book, it's profound, it's moving, that she was trying to be profound. The first book was profound because she wasn't trying to be. It was a profound situation, and she wrote simply about it. In the second book, she's tried to write in a more complicated, profound way, and it just didn't work for me. First, third, yes. Worth a read as a whole book, yes. Interested, very interested to see what she'll come up with for the third book, and I hope she does, and I don't know the woman. Of course, I feel I've got to know her through the books. You know, I really, really hope they are thriving on the rewilded farm. And I hope at whatever stage they're at, if it's still that they continue, as they have done with the walks, to continue to find that daily peace that they obviously need and deserve. Right, a lovely bunch of books, I think, and I really, really thoroughly enjoyed the Shaun Bythell, or the bookseller ones. Just lovely to go back in my own mind to those days when I was a book dealer too. But without doubt, the standout from that whole little bunch of books is the Dick Prenke One Man's Wilderness, which, where is it? There it is. Still on my shelf. It is going to stay on my shelf forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, I think. I've got a feeling it's going to be one of those books where on my deathbed I'll be saying, yep, that was one of the best books I ever read. It's still there because undoubtedly at some point, one day in the future, I will read it again. Gorgeous book. If you can get your hands on a copy, read it. All right, my lovelies, that will do for now. I will see you all again soon. But in the meantime, stay well. Happy reading. For those of you who've got gardens, we're getting right into that sort of seed sowing time, aren't we? Getting organised with our seeds. So whatever you're up to, have fun doing it, and I'll see you all again really soon. Cheerio.